There's another unique feature piece from the ship that was spotted on the wreck site. Just near the after end of the bow section, the twisted remains of a candelabra were spotted. This beautiful light fixture had once sat proudly on the D-deck landing of the staircase, lit with over a dozen bulbs and glowing warmly. Passengers would have passed by it walking down the stairs on their way to dinner each night, but on the night of the sinking, it was lost. In 2010, the candelabra was spotted, twisted and broken in the sand, but it hasn't been recovered. Titanic's sister ship Olympic had an identical candelabra that was sold at auction when the ship was scrapped in the 1930s. It went into private hands and then disappeared. Recently it was found again, heavily modified, but still working as a light fixture at a South African hotel. But the remains of the gorgeous luxury fittings and art are not the only things that can tell us about Titanic's life and death. The ship's engineering was, for the time, absolutely incredible, and a massive achievement. A few details on the wreck today speak to us about the way that the ship was built and operated, and ultimately, how it was destroyed. If you had paid a visit to the Titanic back in 1912, chances are you'd have wanted to enjoy the comfortable lounges and cafes. But as for me, well, you'd have found me down in the engine room. These incredible machines were the pinnacle of Victorian engineering. And I say Victorian because by the time they'd been used on ships like Titanic, their heyday was drawing to a close. The marine triple expansion steam engine had burst onto the scene in the mid to late 1800s, but by the turn of the century, it was largely being superseded by turbines. Titanic actually used both engine types, and a pair of triple expansion steam engines drove the ship's two outboard propellers. Triple expansion engines were reliable and easily maintained. They could pound away for hundreds and thousands of miles without needing serious overhaul. They made economic sense for the Titanic's owners, White Star Line. It's easy to imagine the ship's engineers, led by Chief Joseph Bell, gazing up at their machines with immense pride. But their condition on the wreck today tells us a sad story about how those proud and brave men lost their lives that night, and how their ship broke up from underneath them. Jutting out from the silt, 3 stories tall, are the remains of those immense engines. And although they look intact, they actually are not. See, these engines poke out from the exposed tear at the stern section of the ship, where Titanic had ripped apart. The forces were so extreme that the massive cast bed plates that were designed to hold those hundreds of tons of engine weight in place through storms and rough weather were simply ripped apart like they were made out of cardboard. The breakup of the Titanic seems to have happened somewhere around the engine room. There's another piece of wreck that gives us a clue as to where. In 2 separate halves in the debris field are pieces of Titanic's double bottom.